Hello everybody. Now it is time to continue deconstructing frames. This is part 2 of the previous lecture that we have done before. Remember last time when we were speaking about deconstructing frames, we said that we look at writer's purpose, choice of words, and this is what we did last time. Today we're going to be looking at the second two elements that we look at, which is argument and tone. Let's start with argument. What do we mean by argument? An argument is a piece of logical reasoning whereby an author provides reasons and supporting a specific position on any debatable topic. That is what the writer's point of view and what the argument the writer wants to make and convinces of. Let's look at an example together. Let's read this passage together and look at the argument and analyze the argument. Gas has become too expensive, so a lot of people can't even afford to drive to work anymore. Hybrid cars may be the solution for the problem, since they minimize the use of gas. Also, the use of hybrid cars will improve the environment. It has been proven that the gas emission of hybrid cars is much less than that of regular cars. If every liter of gasoline contains 6 kilograms of carbon dioxide, then hybrid car will emit 23.1 kilograms of carbon dioxide every 161 kilometers, while a conventional car will emit 34 kilograms. If you multiply those numbers over the lifetime of a vehicle, hybrids more than make up for efficient use of energy, but it also reduces air pollution. So let's analyze this together. First of all, what is the argument? The argument is that hybrid cars are better than regular cars. They're more efficient and they use less gas, and they even do not pollute the air. So the argument basically is hybrid cars are better than regular cars. How is the argument supported? The author gives us reasons such as minimizing the use of gas and reduces air pollution. And what is the evidence that what he's saying is right? Research has proven if every liter of gasoline contains 9 kilograms of carbon dioxide, then a hybrid car will emit 23, and so on. So, as we can see, there is the argument and there is the support of this argument, of the reasons why this argument is right, and evidence that the argument is right. The writer's argument is based on, number one, reasoning. The author presents a logical explanation of the argument. Number two, like for example, if we want to end the COVID-19 pandemic, we should respect social distancing. The virus is airborne and spreads very quickly from one person to the other, so social distancing will minimize its spread. As you can see, it is reasoning. If the pandemic is spread through airborne spread, then if we do social distancing, we will minimize its spread. The second way an argument can be based on is evidence. The author presents statistics, facts, and studies to prove his point. Looking again at the COVID-19 situation, let's see. If we want to end the COVID-19 pandemic, we should respect social distancing. Research has proven that the virus spreads and the number of cases doubles every 4 days, but with social distancing measures that immediately bring the doubling time from 4 days up to 8 days. So here the writer is proving his argument based on research, and he gives us facts and that have been proven by research. That is, he bases his argument on evidence. The third way an argument is made is based on appeal. That is, the author appeals to the reader's emotions to elicit empathy. And the example is, if we want to end the COVID-19 pandemic, we should respect social distancing. You don't want to harm your loved ones. If you do not observe social distancing, you can become infected and not only harm yourself, but also harm your family and friends. So, as you can see, it is the same argument. The same argument is the way to end the COVID-19 pandemic is by respecting social distancing. However, in the first case, the writer bases this argument upon reasoning. That is like 1 + 1 = 2. Whereas in the second case, the writer bases his argument upon evidence. He makes use of research to prove that if we observe social distancing, this social distancing is going to control or minimize the spread of the pandemic. And the third argument, although it is the same argument, is based on appeal, on emotional appeal. He talks about our loved ones. He talks about our family, things that we can relate to emotionally, and thus we appeal. What he's saying appeals to us and our emotions. So, how do we really identify the argument? Number one, we understand the context. Is someone trying to convince you of something? Number two, we identify the conclusion. What is the argument all about? What are they trying to convince you of? Number three, identify the reasons. That is, why do they think you should believe them? Let's look at this example. A Lexus mattress is the most comfortable bed you'll ever sleep on. Take a 30-day trial and see for yourself. If you're not satisfied, we'll come to your home, remove the mattress, and refund you in full. You've got nothing to lose. Give it a try. What do you think this is? What is the context? The context here is basically an advertisement. That is, where they're trying to convince us to buy Lexus mattress. And the writer gives us the reasons why we should actually believe that what they're saying is true, and even going to the extent that if we don't like it, we can return it for free. Number two is identifying the conclusion. What are they trying to convince you of? That is, arguments are vehicles intended to convince or compel people to believe something. This something is what we have called the conclusion. Whether the argument works or not depends on whether it supplies compelling reasons to believe this conclusion. But first things first, you can't assess the effectiveness of an argument without first identifying its conclusion. What about identifying the reasons? Why do they think you should believe them? These are claims that support the conclusion. As their name suggests, they give you reason to believe it. Without them, there is no argument, just a claim. It is the evidence or the logical conclusion. Now that we've talked about argument, let's move to tone. And tone is a little bit tricky, let us say, because identifying tone depends. The tone of the article, essay, story, poem, novel, screenplay, or any other written work can be described in many ways. The author's tone can be witty, ready, warm, playful, outraged, a lot of things. Basically, If there is an attitude out there, an author can write with it. The author's tone of voice refers to the words that are added to show point of view or emotion or attitude. That is, the tone of anything is of a piece of writing is actually the reflection of the author's emotion or attitude. There are 3 keys to determining tone. Number 1, context and writer. Number 2, word choice. Number 3, you go with your guts. It's how you feel it. How do you actually receive it? So let's see. Context and writer. Let's look at these 3 examples and try to identify the tone. The first example is a book chapter called Personality Disorders in Introduction to Psychology. That's the name of the book. The book is edited by Rita L. Atkinson and Richard C. Atkinson. What do you think the tone is going to be? Do you think, for example, the tone of this scientific book is going to be satirical? Of course not. The tone is going to be serious, it's going to be matter of fact, it's going to be scientific. So, based on the context where we see the reading or the text, we can actually identify the tone. Let's look at the second example, Walking Around the Sun Barefoot, a story by Ahmed Ragab. Do you know who Ahmed Ragab is? Ahmed Ragab is a famous Egyptian satirist. All of his writing is satirical, and even from the title, Walking Around the Sun Barefoot, do you think what is this going to be? It's obviously going to be a funny story. It's going to have a satirical tone, because we know that Ahmed Ragab is a satirist, and because of the title. Let's look at the third example, The Economic Cost of COVID-19 by Professor Halal Said. You know who Halal Said is? Professor Halal Said is a professor of economics, and now she is the Minister of Planning. So do you think that when Dr. Hala writes an article about the economic cost of COVID-19, is it going to be satirical or is it going to be serious? Of course it's going to be serious and scientific. That is how context and writer define the tone. And another very important thing is word choice. Let's compare these 3 sentences. She shouted hesitantly at the man walking in the street. She shouted angrily at the man walking in the street. She shouted hysterically at the man walking in the street. So, what do you see? What do you see? Is there a difference? In all cases she shouted, but in the first instant, did she really shout angrily? No, she was hesitant. That is, the tone could be hesitant. But if in the second sentence she shouted angrily at the man walking in the street, and angrily here of course is our clue, it's an angry tone. She shouted hysterically at the man walking in the street, and here the tone could be either satiric or could even be hysterical in its own right. To sum up, to analyze a text, we identify 3 important things. Purpose, what is the writer's purpose? Argument, how is the argument actually formed? What evidence is there? What reasons are there? How is the argument presented and constructed? And tone, which is in tone, word choice comes in, because word choice, as you remember last time, can actually identify the tone for us. So these are the 3 most important things we look at when we try to analyze a text. When we read critically, we sometimes have to read critically for comparison. In your textbook, there are several examples where there are texts that are written from different points of view. So, when analyzing a text, you engage in noticing what the authors are saying and how they're saying it. It's not only what they're saying, but it's also how they're saying it. What is the tone? What is the point of view? Are they trying to convince us? Are they just making fun? Are they serious? Are they sad? Are they happy? So, what are they saying and how are they saying it? When you are critically reading for comparison, you widen the view beyond the single source and consider the text in relation to other texts you have read on the same topic. Like, for example, if you remember the two texts you had dealing with the hoodies that were going into malls, there were two different points of view. There were two different frames, and accordingly the tone in each of them was very different. So when we actually try to compare between two different texts, we analyze each text by noticing what the author is saying and how they are saying it. Let's look at this example. It's the same piece of news, however, it's said in 4 different ways. The first one says, which was found in WSJ, says, Trump signs executive action setting framework for scaling back Dodd-Frank financial regulation. The second one from The Guardian says, Trump orders review of Dodd-Frank Act in effort to roll back financial regulations. The third news item, and they're all the same thing. President Trump signed 2 directives on Friday, including one aimed at gutting financial regulations under Dodd-Frank. While the fourth one from the New York Times says, President Trump and Republican lawmakers have begun an assault on financial regulations. Democrats called it a gift to Wall Street. So you can see the difference in tone, number one. You can also see the difference in attitude. Some are with Trump, others are against Trump. Like, for example, if you look at the first one again, Trump signs executive action setting framework for scaling back Dodd-Frank financial regulation. So we could see that it's talking about an executive action, and it shows Trump's power, and it is all against Dodd-Frank. Let's look at the second one, and the second one is much milder. Trump orders review of Dodd-Frank Act in effort to roll back financial regulation. So whereas the first one was affirmative and affirming the action, the second one, it's just a review. It's a review, and it's just an effort. It's not an absolute use of power. Let's look at the third one. President Trump signed 2 directives on Fridays, including one aimed at. So it is taking away the focus from the financial regulations under Dodd-Frank. It is taking away the focus from it. It is one of 2. And then the fourth one is totally against Trump, because it reads, President Trump and Republican lawmakers have begun to assault on official regulations, and assault means attack. So they show that this review and this executive decision are an assault. And although it is the same piece of news in all 4, the attitude and the tone of each is very different. And how was it made different? It was made different based on the choice of word, on the way it was presented, on the frame it was given. Comparing and contrasting related readings, we explore likeness and differences between texts to understand them better. Many of the authors we read are concerned with the same issues or questions, but approach how to discuss them in different ways, as we have just seen in the previous example. In order to compare and contrast, you need to start by identifying the main argument made by each text and the main evidence used to support the arguments. Questions we ask ourselves are things like, what is the author's purpose? What is the author's stand? Is he or she with or against? Number 2, what is the argument? What are they trying to prove? Number 3, what are the main points that support the argument? Number 4, what evidence is used? Number 5, what is the tone the author uses? Is it formal, informal, critical, objective, serious, skeptical? What? How does the author's use of language and tone support the audience's purpose and argument? For example, as we have seen in the previous examples that I've given you about the context, if it's a book about psychology, probably they're going to be using specialized terminology. Or if it's a newspaper article, it's probably they're going to be using simple word choice. Or if it's something that they want to work on our emotional appeal, so we'll find words with emotional connotations. Finally, what influences do these differences have on the way the text reads, or the way in which you, as the reader, make sense of the text? So these different kinds of presentations have different effects on the reader and makes the reader feel differently. In conclusion, I hope you have enjoyed this course and found it useful, and that now you're capable of critical reading, which, as we had said in the beginning, is not only about surface reading, but it's about reading a text deeply and reading the ability to read in between the lines and validate the argument. Please do all the exercises in your textbook, which will actually give you a lot of practice and make you a competent reader and hence a competent translator. I really enjoyed teaching this course, and I hope you enjoyed it too, and I hope I'll be seeing you in person next time, next semester, inshallah. Thank you very much. Bye bye.